Hey, Andy. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much, Hilary. Really appreciate you having me in today.
Awesome. I'm excited to talk about Faraday and IntelliFi and credit unions and data and all that fun stuff. Before we jump in, maybe you can sort of give us a high level overview of Faraday, what Faraday does in general. Tell us about Faraday.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Andy Rossmeissl. I'm the CEO of Faraday. We are an AI platform for predicting consumer behavior. So we're not like a general purpose AI tool like you may have seen out there, like a Google Vertex or something. We're very specific to just predicting customer behaviors. Things like, whether leads are going to convert, what people are going to buy next, if people are going to churn, how much money they're going to spend over time, things like that. So if you are a brand trying to make your customer experience more predictive, you basically have two options. You can either try to build all the AI stuff yourself from scratch, license data, choose your algorithms, do all the, data transformation necessary, deployment, or you could use Faraday, which lets you set up machine learning pipelines using a graphical user interface or our API to basically declare the predictions you want, and then we make them and deploy them back to you. So you can really focus more on the practical aspects of then using those predictions to make customer experience more delightful for your customers.
But with all of the AI speak out there, AI and predictive analytics, it can sound complicated.
Yeah.
Can you break down what those terms mean in simple language?
Sure. Yeah. So AI is a very broad class of techniques that computers can use to do helpful things that a human otherwise might need to do. Within that, we can see machine learning is another subcategory of techniques where historical data is reviewed by algorithms in a systematic way, and the outcome is to find patterns. And so I tell people, when you hear terms like AI, you hear terms like ML, machine learning, really the word that should pop in your mind is patterns. And the way to think about this is like, we're constantly humans, we're constantly finding patterns and using them, right? And if it's dark and it looks a little bit ominous outside, like we can all predict that it's going to maybe start raining soon. And if we're trying to go out, maybe we'll bring an umbrella. And it's not hard. We don't really think about it. It's not something that's necessarily a conscious effort we make. But AI is just the same kind of thing. So it's going to look at historical data, things people have done, not done, all sorts of attributes associated with them. And it's going to look for commonalities. It's going to see that, customers reflecting certain behaviors, having certain attributes are likely to adopt another product or maybe at risk for churning. That's all it is finding those patterns. And predictive analytics is kind of the very specific field that lets you find those patterns in this context and then apply them so that you can use those patterns to anticipate what people are going to do next. And that's really what it's about. We're living in a time where everybody's expecting customer experiences to be tailored to them, kind of like harkening back to the old days of walking into the corner store and everybody knows your regular order. People want that again. AI can help you get there.
That's a good point. Discovering patterns beyond human capacity is really how we usually put it, because I can
Yeah.
sit here with all of these matching color cards, and if I have hundreds of thousands of them, it's going to take me a really long time to separate them and put the similar ones next to the similar ones. And imagine just having AI, having, a machine to do it for you. So,
Yeah, that's right. And as long as you keep in mind that these machines are not really truly intelligent, you'll be able to use the stuff in the right places in the right ways.
so what kinds of companies does Faraday work with currently? Because obviously you work with EmpowerFi and we work with financial institutions. So other than financial institutions, what types of companies does Faraday work directly with?
So we really run the gamut. We're focused exclusively on B2C, consumer-facing, brands and commerce. So that'll be anything from retail and e-commerce, for example, to like insurance companies, home services, actually, where we got our start a little under 12 years ago. But we really love working with agencies because this is really, I think, the best kind of partnership because we all know that using predictions is kind of an art and a science together, right? And Faraday's really good at the science part. We can ingest the data, we can append all these attributes, we can find patterns, we can make predictions, but it takes artists and subject matter experts like EmpowerFi to know the right ways to incorporate those predictions into the various systems and tools and experiences to make them valuable. Because a prediction is not valuable on its own. It's just sort of sitting there in a database, and you have to find the right way to employ it really to make it valuable. And then that's where you come in, right? We've been doing this for 6 years or something like that.
Almost, I think, almost 6 years.
Yeah.
In March, I think it'll be 6 years. Long time. And, we've come a long way too in learning the platform and learning machine learning and analytics. And, we sort of found that gap in this industry where these actionable insights are out there and the enhanced decision making and the potential to drive growth and
Yeah.
acquisition and improve your churn. And we found that executive bandwidth is a huge issue in our industry. So as much as these financial institutions want to use the data, do they have the time? It's just another tool. And so we sort of found this gap and we partnered with Faraday years ago to offer the managed services side, which is the art. It's
Yeah.
the creative side, but it's an analytical side as well. And so we are able to offer now the done for you analytics. So the executives can focus on their strategic decision making and we'll handle all the heavy lifting. Worked with Faraday for so long, we are so good at looking at these insights and generating recommendations for these financial institutions. So taking it a step further, not just looking at the data and pulling these actionable insights, but then taking it a step further and saying, here's what we recommend based on the data we're seeing. And so, should it be variable imagery used based on the persona set? How deeply should we customize the campaign? Should we even be doing this type of campaign or sending this type of offer to these people? So, we don't just provide those reports and then you sit there and read them and give them to your board. That's not how this works. We provide actionable data that you can actually provide, you can take action on.
Yes.
It's been a really great partnership over the years. And man, I have to say, it's our clients absolutely love it. And so do we, because we get to strategize with so many financial institutions across the country. And we're really starting to find some deep insights and patterns.
Sure. I mean, EmpowerFi really is the leader in the space for knowing how financial institutions can benefit from predictive techniques. You're able to connect the dots, as you say, with analytics and creative and all the plumbing and glue and,
Yeah.
like you say, do it for you. We have some financial institutions that work directly with Faraday, but they have to configure the whole platform. They have to provision all the configuration. They have to sort of know the right types of things to predict and how to incorporate them into the core and other places. And it takes a lot of work. So having expertise really goes a long way.
It does. It takes a lot of work. And, we have the data analyst on staff, so they don't have to. And, if they do have a data analyst on staff, that's great too. We work really well. We play well in the sandbox with
Yeah.
data analysts, but it still frees up their time, their bandwidth. They've got plenty of things to do. They don't necessarily have the resources. And so it's been a really great 5 years working with this platform. And our designers even are really well versed in reading the data that comes out of.
Right.
And as a graphic designer, you wouldn't think that you would, be dealing with data very much. But seeing those insights, now they're learning how to read the insights and design marketing campaigns based on the data and based on the personas that we're seeing. So it's pretty cool.
It is.
So, Andy, how does Faraday ensure that the data used in the predictive models is accurate and ethically sourced? And it's something that comes up a lot, but why is that super important?
Yeah, and I would say the most important in the financial space, right? I mean, everybody cares now about responsible AI and ethical data and things like this, but we know that in the financial services space there's regulation, right? So it's even more important. And we've definitely found that FIs are going beyond regulatory requirements to just doing the right thing in every way that you can. And we've been doing this for such a long time. Responsible AI has been part of our DNA since we started. Been first to market with most of the new innovations in responsible AI for predicting customer behavior. And it does all start with data, right? And so we know that we have to go out and procure data on people we want to make predictions about, because that is how you're able to find patterns. And so at Faraday, we spend a lot of time and an enormous amount of money sourcing the best possible data, not just in terms of accuracy, but in terms of how it's obtained. So we license data from vendors like Epsilon, best in the business, and they take it as really the core part of their job to get permission, opt-in permission from all consumers where this data is coming from. And it's primarily commercially sourced, right? So it's the kind of data that you and I are typically going to be, more comfortable with the world knowing. And even though it's obviously secure and private, it is being used to make predictions about you and about hundreds of millions of adults. So we have to be really careful about where the data comes from, that it's permissioned, that it's stored securely, that it's used in the right way. And that last bit is, I think, really the new frontier for practitioners like the both of us. Even if the data is accurate, is there embedded bias in there that has emerged over the last century of data collection, where there are systematic prejudices that were in place that have led to disparities in the historical data we find among different kinds of groups, whether that's along gender, racial, ethnic lines. In financial services, we know that this is a reality, with things like redlining being part of our past here in this country. So Faraday, again, market leader on this, working hand in hand with folks like EmpowerFi, has been able to come out with automated bias detection across all of these sensitive dimensions. Sometimes it turns out not to be harmful, but we are able to show you where there is bias in the data. And then in addition to detecting that bias, we can also help you correct it, right? So that many of our shared clients here do include bias mitigation as part of their work, because they know that not only from a regulatory perspective, but from just a brand perspective and their corporate mission, that they want to make sure they're treating people fairly and they're growing their business in a responsible way. So it's like everything from the data that gets entered into the system all the way through to how it's used. There's so many opportunities to take an inadvertent wrong turn. And luckily, when you have an agency like EmpowerFi using technology like Faraday, there are ways to avoid those pitfalls.
So talk to me about the difference between the first party and the third party data, just with regard to the Faraday platform.
Yeah, so we really need both, right? And I think folks will find that at the very least, you're always going to need first party data for any kind of a predictive project, because what you're looking at is historical trends that you can find patterns in. So for example, if you're trying to predict, let's say which of your leads are likely to convert, you're going to need data on all your past leads and whether they converted or not. That's first party data. That's data that the brand has collected, that the brand owns and controls. And they can collect that in a number of different ways. It can be volunteered by the customer. That we call that zero party data. Typically, it's just sort of another form of first party. It can be data that's sort of observed from the user making transactions using the product. And that's really important. I think where some brands fall short with their prediction projects is they think that that's all they need. They think that with a combination of this historical transactional data, maybe some observed behavioral data, email opens, clicks, things like that, that would be enough to be able to predict various outcomes. And it turns out that that's not practically common. It's just not rich enough data to really get at the truth of, what types of people are likely to do various things. And also there's a cold start problem where if, somebody has limited relationship with you, then they haven't had time to exhibit the kind of behavior that could ultimately be predictive. So that's where third-party data comes in. And this is the type of data we license at Faraday from our partners like Epsilon, and we're able to match all that data together because it's all identity based. The FI has got their data connected to an individual's name, address, email, phone number, things like that. The data we procure and resolve at Faraday tagged on the same kind of identifier. So we're able behind the scenes at Faraday to match all that data together. And that's what we are able to present to our machine learning algorithms for them to find patterns. And the really big advantage of working this way is that Faraday then doesn't have to reveal all that third-party data out to our partners like EmpowerFi or the end client, the financial institution. And that just helps protect privacy. We get to use those really key details to find patterns and make models, but it doesn't have to then be revealed all the way back to the brand. We have less concerns about security and privacy to worry about in that case.
Yeah. I think it's hard to understand when you're not in it and learning the platform and utilizing this type of AI and predictive analytics on a daily basis. It's hard to understand that, why do we need to use our member data? Why can't we just use the third party data? And, a good example is acquisition. We want to go find members who are likely to join the credit union or likely to take an action that are not members yet. And we need that current first party data to find out who those members are that are your most loyal, who are those members who join the credit union, and go find more that look like those individuals. And so, especially with acquisition, it can be confusing as to how we use first party versus third party data.
Yeah. Yeah, because you definitely need the third party data there too, because in the past, I think financial institutions have used things like every door direct mail, right, to try to, find new customers in their service territories, or more recently, obviously, digital advertising. The problem is that, those can cast such broad nets, and you can end up spending an enormous amount of money chasing people who are really not a great fit with your organization. So using AI is the way to kind of bridge that gap and do acquisition more efficiently.
Yeah, we're finding that we can hyper target using this data, the predictive analytics data, and you're spending the same amount of money you would be on every door direct, but you're targeting people who have the highest likelihood. You can whittle it down to just sending 300 people a postcard if you want.
Yeah.
But these 300 people have an extremely high over index score in, their likelihood to join the credit union. When you're doing every door direct, that's literally the definition of spray and pray marketing. And it can work for certain things, but why not spend the same amount of money on some individuals with a right call to action who are likely to respond, more likely to respond.
And we've worked together on projects where it gets even more sophisticated, where not only are we identifying the right targets in the service territory, but then also which persona each of those targets falls in. So we can have different versions of the mail piece or the digital ad or whatever it may be. So you can appeal to people who are in different life stages, have different needs, they're looking for different products, they need different support from the financial institution. That kind of ability to customize, tailor, personalize the outreach to each person, it becoming an overwhelming ocean boiling exercise. That's the amazing happy medium we get from working with a partner like EmpowerFi with our technology combined.
That's where it gets really fun for us. And most people would say that sounds like a nightmare. Like imagine taking a brush and trying to brush like a big knot out of someone's hair, like strand by strand. That's kind of what it's like. Really odd analogy there, but that's the first thing I think of is just like a knot tied in string or something. Where we come in is we start pulling it and saying this goes over here and this goes over here, and it's really fun for us because especially when we get to work with clients who are utilizing different types of media for their marketing, and we can power all of it with the AI and predictive analytics. And an example would be they're doing out of home billboard, they're doing OTT, they're doing pre-roll and social mirroring ads in addition to retargeting and Facebook ads and Google PPC. They're doing all of those in addition to some direct mail and email.
Sure.
Here we can power it down to, where they should place the billboard based on the
Yeah.
personas that reside around the billboard. And we've had so much success, especially in the acquisition side, with utilizing these out of home and these digital type of advertising, but segmenting using the predictive analytics. And that's really what we see as the full ecosystem, is where you're powering all of the marketing that you possibly can with prediction. That's our
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah, you might as well,
Yeah.
right? I mean, just going to get
Yep.
better.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, with financial institutions who might be just starting out with predictive analytics, what do you see as the first steps that they should take, whether they're using Faraday or using EmpowerFi or not?
Yeah.
What are the first steps that they should take to see results a little more quickly, or tangible results?
Yeah. Great question. I would say that, especially in the credit union world, there is a strong desire to expand the relationship with your members, right? Who may have started with a home loan or a car loan or something, and you're trying to expand them into additional, offerings. I know right now there's a huge push to get more deposits on the book. So expanding from, say, a car loan into a savings account. And this ability to know what the customer's journey will look like ahead of time so you can send them down it in the right direction. That's the biggest opportunity. We have a brand new offering at Faraday called Recommender, which helps you as a financial institution identify the next best offer for each one of your members. So that when you have an agency like EmpowerFi in place, they can have different variants of all the engagement and outreach to help each member along the path to the correct product.
Yeah.
If I, for example, I mean, if I had started with an auto loan, it could be that deposits is the correct route for me, but it could also be that a home loan or a personal loan or a credit card or something else is really the best way for me to become more engaged with the financial institution. And we all know, as soon as you have 2 or 3 products consolidated into one FI, the likelihood that this person is going to become a loyal customer over time really ramps up. So that next best offer, I really feel like these days is the best sort of bang for the buck early upfront. You're already doing outreach. It's just a matter of inserting the correct offering in your outreach to get people on the right road.
Yeah, and bring that over to my side now. I totally agree with that, because the easiest thing for credit unions to start with, who maybe aren't doing a lot of marketing, or maybe they're doing a ton of marketing, but they can get better, is the onboarding and engagement journey for
Yeah.
members. So onboarding is just one piece of it,
Yeah.
but using Faraday's analytics, we can determine which of your members are most likely to need a specific product next. So when Andy joins the credit union, he might need a credit card next. And when Hilary joins the credit union, it could be a home equity loan. So they shouldn't be receiving the same message. So for us, building onboarding journeys and engagement journeys and product drip campaigns or journeys is really what works well, powering it using that recommender. So you can design a personalized member journey or drip campaign, product engagement campaign that promotes the product, not only the product, but to those members who have the high likelihood of being
Right.
interested. And
Right.
then you take the persona layered on top of that and you give it color and context. And now you know that this persona typically are pet lovers and avid book readers, and you can put pictures of dogs on there and guiding them through that tailored experience then. So I would absolutely agree with you that that next best product is probably the fastest way to success, and then powering your internal member journeys with it. I agree.
Totally, yeah. I mean, and then the other thing that comes to mind is, it's just from like a strategic and insight standpoint, is personas, right? Like, your member base, it's easy to think of as monolithic, but we both know, and I think marketers know in general, that there's so much diversity hiding in there. And you can, obviously, if you want, continue the traditional thing where you kind of approach your member base monolithically. You send out email blasts that are all the same to everybody, and there's a monthly newsletter or something that everybody gets. Or you could say, is really a different institution for these 5 different groups of people. They have different expectations, different needs, different desires, different like situations in their lives, different things they need help with. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out and develop a totally custom narrative for each individual member you have, but you can bucket them and then design just a few variations. And doing personas clustering is, as you know, is a technique. K-means clustering in the machine learning world is a really great way of doing that bucketing. It leaves you with very thematically coherent, interesting, robust groups of people that you can reach out to, in a really kind of resounding way.
Yeah, and what I like about the personas, they're behavior driven, so they're not predetermined buckets.
Right.
Like a lot of the personas out there, I'm not going to name any names, but a lot of them out there are predetermined buckets, or at least that's what I consider it. And they're by, demographics and maybe geographics and income or something like that. So it's none of that. And we see so many new personas pop up with clients every day that we never would have thought, never have seen before, new patterns emerging. And it's so interesting to be on this side of it and see all the personas that pop up. And, we utilize personas as well at EmpowerFi during a rebranding process. So you might not think that, logo development and identity and things like that have much to do with personas, but when we are rebranding a financial institution, looking at color palette, looking at even down to the font style, we look at the personas and, everybody has those personas who are the aging member and they're retired and the CDs and all of that. But who are the ones in the middle and the ones that are going to be utilizing this brand? And then better yet, taking a look at the non-members in the field of membership and in starting to look at their persona sets and how would they interact with a brand or colors or fonts like this. And so this data can be used everywhere within the organization, but all the way down to brand and color and logo if you want.
And you raise a really good point, Hilary, which is that you can't look at the personas in a vacuum, right? There, or at just one moment in time. The distribution of the personas changes over time, and it's one of the strongest ways an institution can know where their service territory is headed, right? It could be that they had a dominant persona 3, 4, 5 years ago, but dominant persona, maybe it's still the biggest one, but maybe it's shrinking, and maybe there is this much smaller persona that, the neighborhood's changing, your region's changing, your service territory is changing. Maybe that one is small now, but it's very clearly growing month over month. And it helps you get ahead of the game a bit, right? This is where we're going to need to be in a couple of years. If we're going through rebranding now, let's do it the right way so we can skate to where the puck's going to be, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Having a coughing attack.
No worries. So did you want me to ask you any of these questions or?
No, those were mostly.
I think it was like pretty conversational, so it was nice.
Yeah, those are mostly my notes.
Okay.
I could.
If you could talk.
To what you were saying. Goodness, not really sure what happened there. Let's see. The only thing is maybe a success story that's like outside of our industry.
Okay.
That you can think of. So I'll ask you that. And then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, unless there's anything else you can think of that we need to.
No. Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Can you share an easy to understand story where predictive analytics made a noticeable difference for a different kind of brand, maybe outside of the financial?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I mean, just picking up on the sort of next best offer thing, right? Recommendations. So there's a brand we work with called Bespoke Post. They're in a subscription e-commerce world, and they have sort of a very similar challenge to credit unions and other FIs who are trying to figure out the right additional product or service to add on to an existing core use case. And in the past, when they have tried to just present maybe popular offers or random selection of offers, there's been relatively limited uptake. But when you are able to predict which additional things each person might want, they found a 10% lift in conversion rate there, which, for an organization like that dealing at a great scale is a profound change. And even for a credit union, being able to improve the cross sell conversion rate on a campaign by 10%, that's a meaningful, financial impact to an organization. So it's just a good example, I think, of how you're already doing something. You're an intelligent organization, you do the right things, generally speaking, and just layering in that tiny flavor of AI. I mean, it's hard to do. I don't mean to downplay it, but you just, change this one little thing. Individual members may not even realize they're getting a different set of recommendations from everybody else, but
Yeah.
it makes it just enough more relevant that engagement is higher and people end up having a better relationship with their financial institution.
Yeah. And to translate that a little bit into the financial side, obviously there's only, when it comes to tiered offers, it's a really great way to utilize this data, tiering the offer based on
Yeah.
their propensity to take the action. But in financial institutions do have to be careful with that, because there's
Yeah.
with lending and truth in lending and all of that. But when it comes to, credit card rewards or checking account rewards, and you're doing promotions on reward points and things like that, maybe you can tier them and provide this persona A for back to school shopping, and
Yeah.
persona B rewards for pet food shopping.
Totally.
So thinking about personalization all the way down to that level, but that's really
Yeah.
the same type of thing, but translated in the financial industry. That too.
Exactly. That's right on. I mean, that's the art and the science there.
We've been doing this for a long time. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I'm glad after 5 years, we finally got to chat a little bit about AI and predictive analytics and the stuff that we do every day. But thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much for having me, Hilary.